Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So what does food mean to you? Well, this week is my special Memorial Day segment. I don't know about you, but I am looking forward to finally seeing summer and all the beautiful weather and the great food and picnics and being outdoors in my garden. And today's guest is David Paige, who is the author of Food Americana. Memorial Day can't be any more American. And he's also, as something very interesting, David Paige is the creator the hit series on Food Network, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, hosted by Guy Fieri. So stay tuned for our special segment on Food Americana for Memorial Day. But I also wanted to share with you some interesting facts about Memorial Day. These are according to WalletHub.com. And did you know that 818 hot dogs are consumed every second from Memorial Day to Labor Day? So that's about 7 billion total hot dogs. I wonder how many of those are vegetarian or plant-based. And if you like drinking beer during the holidays, the top periods for beer sales, 4th of July is the first. Memorial Day is the second, and Labor Day is the third. And $1.6 billion is the amount of sales of meat for total in the U.S. for Memorial Day. And since many of us do travel on Memorial Day, so 3.4 million people are expected to travel by plane over Memorial Day weekend, and that's actually up 11% from 2022. And however, the top spot for travel for Memorial Day is Orlando, Florida. Are you planning a trip for Memorial Day weekend? Where are you going to? Share it with us. You can share it with us at on social media, hashtag the Maria Liberati Show. Let us know where you're going for Memorial Day. And if you have any pictures of your Memorial Day holiday, you can just be home having a picnic. Share it with us also on social media, hashtag the Maria Liberati Show. But Orlando, Florida is the most popular domestic destination for Memorial Day weekend travel. The second popular spot for Memorial Day weekend travel is New York City. And the third popular spot, Las Vegas, Nevada. So where are you going? Let us know. Hopefully you'll share it with us. And if you're just staying home, there's nothing better than having a staycation. Share some photos with us also. Again, hashtag the Maria Liberati Show on social media, and we will also share them.
Well, happy Memorial Day. I have David Paige joining me for my Memorial Day. And he is, if you don't know, David is the creator of the hit show Diners, Drives, and Dives with Guy Fieri. Guy still hosts that, right, David?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I peeled off after season 11, but he hung in there.
And also, we have to mention your really interesting book, Food Americana, which you're going to talk about. And, this is summertime is officially starting as of today. So everybody's into, barbecuing and hamburgers and apple pie and all these wonderful American foods that there's a history about. Lobster rolls, I think, mentioned that too, which is a great summer food. So let's have some fun and talk about that today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thank you, David. Thanks for being here. So I know this book, Food Americana, sounds really interesting. So tell us about, I guess let's start with the hamburger. What's going on with that? I know you have some.
Well, a hamburger has become a multifaceted item. You can get any kind of hamburger now. the basic burger, the burger that's smashed on the grill. I mean, there's obviously a chain called Smash Burger that makes them that way.
Yes.
And increasingly, the hamburger has become a go-to item and more expensive at white tablecloth restaurants. You can't run an upscale place serving lunch to business people without having a $28 hamburger on the menu. In the book, I actually go back into the history of some of that, and I talked to Daniel Boulud, who is the multi-Michelin starred, internationally famous chef, who actually created an iconic burger that led many, many other expensive restaurants to put a burger of their own on the menu. It was back in, I think, the 90s. I'd have to check my own book, but early 90s, that there was a controversy in France over the fact that McDonald's had opened up and was spreading throughout the country. And in one particular small French town, they set fire to the McDonald's. Daniel Boulud, being French, was deeply offended by that. In his view, why can't you have a McDonald's? And it spurred him, he told me, to think about what a French hamburger would be. What's the burger that you would enjoy with red wine? And he created a burger. Of the outside of it, of course, is ground beef, but inside, he stuffed the burger with braised beef, short ribs, which is a French specialty,
Oh, yeah.
and foie gras. And then he topped it with a homemade tomato compote, and it was on a special bun. And when you cut it open, it's like having a turducken. You see the various
Oh, my.
different layers.
So the
Is still selling it at multiple restaurants around the world today.
wow. So that's sold around the world then, not just in France.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he's got restaurants all around the world, so
Around the
he
world,
sells it
yes.
in New York,
Yes.
and I believe now I'm gonna mess it up. I was gonna say Singapore. I maybe Singapore and elsewhere. And it's kind of the over the top model for a super duper burger.
Yes. Yes. Well, I know in Italy there was a commotion when McDonald's purchased them.
Yeah, it's look. The fact of the matter is, McDonald's is what it is, even though they do change their menu depending upon the country they're
Yeah.
in. But they're seen as, unfortunately, something American. Just as when we send what we've done to pizza back to the rest of the world, and when I say that, there's phenomenal pizza in America. There's been a renaissance in artisanal pizza, but the chains like Domino's and Pizza Hut, they are what they are. But when they open up, and most of their expansion is now being done internationally, because let's face it, where else are you going to go in America? They are seen as American food. They're not seen as Italian food. They're seen as a particularly American experience. And despite many people overseas telling you they look down their nose at America, there is still something about pizza, burgers, and jeans
Yeah.
that is attractive in many other
Yes, well,
countries.
when I'm in Italy, it's funny that you say that. So if you go to a McDonald's there, and I've gone because they have cappuccino, if you want a quick cappuccino, and it's also a novelty because they're set up. Some of them are actually quite interesting. The first one in the center of Rome is interesting, but I was just going to say, it seems to be like a tourist attraction for people in Rome if they want that American experience. So yes, even though they do, and I'm not here or there for McDonald's, I'm just saying, it's just always overwhelmed with people. It's kind of like a tourist attraction, and especially for people that might not have come to the United States, I think they feel like, well, I'm going to get the American experience, so.
When I lived in Budapest in '89, they had just opened a McDonald's, and it was the busiest place in town. Now, a lot of that is because you couldn't have it before. In other words,
Yes.
I remember when I was going to college in Oklahoma, Coors beer was not sold in the East. You could get it in Oklahoma, and when I would bring it back to New York, people would go nuts. Now, Coors is a crappy beer,
Yeah.
but because you couldn't get it, it was something to be. It's like In-N-Out Burger, which happens to be a good hamburger, but there's a legend around In-N-Out Burger because people cannot get it
Yeah.
in the eastern part of the country. And if you go to LA, you got to have an In-N-Out Burger.
Exactly.
And by the way, I'm one of those who does, but it's absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Exactly. So tell us about some of the other interesting, like, the history of some of this Americana food. Because as I was mentioning to you, I'm always telling people we do have, my specialty is Italian food and the history of that. But America, as you know so well, because you did this wonderful book on it, America does have history to some of their interesting foods. So tell us.
Which I go into in great detail. But let's start with your specialty, pizza.
Yes.
In southern Italy, at the time that migration began to the United States, the people coming here were dirt poor, and at home, pizza was a low cost dish. It was extremely simple, topped with tomatoes, and if you had an extra buck or two, you could top it with a piece of lard or perhaps a sardine. Now, arrive in the United States, find this bounty of food that, by comparison, was immense, that was available to people who were poor, especially including meat, which, if you lived in southern Italy and you were poor, you didn't have meat. In the United States, it was possible to have meat, so that ended up on top of pizzas. But the pizzas themselves differed because of the reality of the situation. First of all, the incredible mozzarella from Italy would not survive a boat trip. So it had to be replaced with an American version of it, which at the time was not as good. But more importantly, to how the pizza developed, the wheat available in the United States was much higher in protein than the wheat that was grown in Italy. And the ovens here were gas fueled compared to the ovens in Italy, which were wood fired. Put those two factors together, and there's no way that you can get the crust you used to get in Italy. What you got here was crispier, crunchier, the kind of crust Americans have grown to adore because it's the only thing they were first offered.
Yeah.
That's right off the bat. We imported a food from another country, and by necessity, we changed it. We do that with so many different foods. I argue in the book, for example, that sushi is now an American dish. The number 2 or 3 executive at the company that produces the most prepackaged sushi in the United States told me she believes that when she was younger, she and her friends running out from high school to grab a lunch would grab a burger. Today, her kids, when they do the same thing, pick up sushi. Now, again, in in most cases, the sushi that is popular here is not sushi as sold in Japan, which tends to be simpler. The rolls are, if maki is one form of sushi, it's rolls. Compared to the Americanized roll, which is the size of a Buick, uh, we now fill sushi with things like steak and French fries. We deep fry sushi,
Oh, yeah.
which in the book I talk about a gas station with a sushi bar in Oklahoma with great sushi, but most of what they sell to the crowd out there is deep fried. There are places that produce sushi with fried chicken on the inside. We've taken this dish and we've made ourselves comfortable with it. We certainly did that with Chinese food.
Yes.
Although what you're seeing interestingly with Chinese food now and with other cuisines
Yeah.
is that the weight and balance of immigration is such that there is now enough of a native Chinese population in the United States for Chinese restaurants to begin catering to them, not the non-Chinese majority of the US. So you're seeing for the first time, and it's been happening for a number of years, you're seeing the kind of food that is actually eaten in China, some of which would be familiar to most Americans because there's a lot of dumplings, there's a lot of noodles. But I was taken to this massive food court in Flushing, Queens, in New York, an area that I was born in Flushing. At the time, it was Jewish and Italian. Now it's all Asian, mostly Chinese. And this was before the pandemic, but I'm certain that they've reopened. It was a massive hall with stand after stand after stand of people fresh making in front of you food as eaten in China. One amazing dish called dry pot, where you kind of pick your ingredients, sort of like a Chipotle, and it comes back mixed in a bowl, spicy as can be. But the difference is that it contains ingredients most Americans would turn their noses up at, like tendon or tripe or artery or duck blood. And if you just stretch your envelope a little bit, the food's incredible. I was taken there by a couple of young Chinese, a couple who were or had been students when they first came to the United States. One of them's like a physicist, and they were pointing out the things I should try, and it was just remarkable. And you're seeing on a much smaller basis, you're seeing something similar in Mexican food now, where all of American Mexican food came from the food of the norteños, the people in the north of Mexico, who, after the Mexican-American War, to their shock and I presume horror, the border was redrawn and they were no longer living in Mexico. Now they were living in the United States. But it was their particular evolved as Mexican American with all the changes that are employed with any new cuisine. These days, Mexico, like most countries, has regional cuisines, and they're all somewhat different. These days, given increasing immigration from other parts of Mexico, we're now seeing foods that had not traditionally been part of the Mexican American menu, such as mole, that incredible sauce based on chilies, often with the inclusion of Mexican chocolate, that is served on many things, but most traditionally on chicken. Or actually, if you go back to Mexico eons ago, it would have been on turkey. But mole on chicken is just phenomenal. And the latest Mexican regional food that is really taken off across the U.S. is something called birria de res. Birria is stewed meat, often served, originally served as goat in central Mexico, but birria de res is birria made of beef. And starting in Southern California a few years back, birria de res tacos, in which the beef is put on top of a tortilla. The tortilla is flipped over. It's put on the grill. It's braised on both sides, grilled on both sides, pardon me. And then it is served with a cup of the original cooking liquid, which is now called consommé, into which, like a French dip sandwich, you dip the taco. It is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, it's great.
That's
Just
really
great.
interesting. What I wanted to have you touch upon, because it's barbecue and grilling season officially, and I know you were telling me some really interesting things about barbecuing and grilling. It's like a real big trend now, you were saying, and some other trends happening. So tell us.
Well, what's happening with barbecue, which is not grilling, which we'll explain in a second,
Yes.
is that barbecue for eons had been a highly regional thing in the United States. But barbecue, the name is believed to come from a Taino native word. That was a tribe that was found in the Caribbean for the way they cooked things. They would have 4 sticks and then a frame on top of it over coals. And this was first seen by explorers coming to the New World, originally Spanish. So they, pardon me, I'm getting choked up about barbecue. They transformed the native word into barbacoa, which then Englishified to barbecue. By definition, barbecue became in America the low and slow cooking of originally a whole animal over indirect heat from coals. Now, over time, it modified in a billion ways. For one thing, when the meatpacking industry figured out how to sell beef in parts as opposed to whole cows or sides of cows, it allowed different barbecue genres to focus on different pieces of the animal. Originally, you took a whole whatever and cooked it. Uh, Different forms of barbecue then were invented in different places. The tangy sauces of the Carolinas, and in the Carolinas there are different variations of those sauces. The sweet barbecue of Kansas City or St. Louis, the beef barbecue of Central Texas, which was generally brisket and sausage. And you used to look forward to going to a particular place. You know, if you wanted Memphis ribs, you went to Memphis. Well, a fascinating thing has happened over the past few years, and you can consider it good or bad depending upon your point of view. But all of those styles have now migrated. And there's an article in Texas Monthly right now about whether or not the Texas style brisket being made in North Carolina is good. But you got places like Smoke in Chicago where the owner traveled around the country, sampled different kinds of barbecue, and offers most of them in one place. So the good news is if you're not going to Memphis, you can probably get Memphis ribs in Utah.
Yes.
The bad news, if you're a purist, is that they're probably not going to be quite as good as they would have been in Memphis. We're seeing a lot of that kind of homogenization of regional foods of all kinds. I mean, you can get a lobster roll anywhere now.
Yes.
I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and in the summer we would go to Maine, and you looked forward to getting lobster in Maine. And it can be perfect there because you literally can eat it on a wharf where the boats come in and they haven't been shipped anywhere. But the lobster roll is now a national dish to a great extent because of a chef named Rebecca Charles, who put them on the menu at a restaurant she owned in New York because she was looking for she had to fill out this menu of sandwiches. She needed another sandwich. She had lived in Maine, so she added the lobster roll. It was there, not in Maine, that the media picked up on this wacky sandwich and publicized it. And now there are lobster roll franchises literally from coast to coast. And of course, you know, a lobster roll is a wonderful summer dish.
Yeah, oh, it
Wonderful
is.
summer dish.
So tell us now about grilling. I know my favorite thing to do is grilling. I love grilling vegetables and shrimp and corn, and even sometimes fruits. So tell us, I know you were telling us the difference between the barbecue.
Well, this isn't always true. Barbecue is what it is unless it isn't.
Right.
But barbecue supposedly is low and slow over indirect heat.
Right.
Grilling is fast and hot and right over the coals. And somehow we've come to call backyard grilling barbecuing.
Yeah.
It's not. But there's not, I mean, big deal. There's nothing better than a hamburger and some hot dogs and some vegetables
Yes.
on the grill, seared, flipped, and, you know, the juice should be running down your chin. What people don't realize about grilling is you can grill almost anything.
Yes.
Vegetables are a perfectly good example. You know, there's the standard suspects, hot dogs, hamburgers, sausages. You can grill lobster tails.
Yes.
And they're wonderful. You can grill fish, and you should. The one thing with grilling is you really have to watch for flare-ups. If you walk away from the grill and the fat drips onto the coals or onto the gas jet, now all of a sudden you're enjoying blackened something when that may not have been part of the recipe.
Of what you're doing. Yes.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about summer foods. I haven't mentioned there's a real renaissance now in ice cream.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's been a real serious move toward artisanal ice cream.
Uh-huh.
And let me back up.
Yeah,
When you hear homemade ice cream at some place down the street from you, let's be honest,
yeah,
the mix, the base, the milk and cream that they're using probably came in a bag
yeah,
because it had to be pasteurized.
yeah.
The question then becomes, what do you do with that ice cream to make it something special? What do you do in terms of mix-ins, swirls, syrups, flavors? And there's been a real big move toward savory ice creams these days. There's a place I live on a Long Beach Island, New Jersey, which is a tourist destination in the
Yes.
summer. And our local handmade ice cream place has turned out lobster ice cream for a particular restaurant wanted it. Haven't had it, but it sounds interesting.
Uh-huh.
There's a small chain. I was going to say on the West Coast, but they're now open in Miami,
Right.
called Salt and Straw, that approaches ice cream completely from an haute cuisine fashion and makes incredibly complicated. The owner told me the number of ingredients is limited only by the number of hands they can get around the ice cream machine to put stuff in. But he also hand makes all of the ingredients, which is, to me, when someone says they're artisanal ice cream,
Uh-huh.
if they're making their own ingredients, because a fudge brownie as made to eat as a fudge brownie doesn't perform well in ice cream because the temperature and being surrounded by a form of liquid turns the brownie into. At Salt and Straw, they figured out how to make a brownie specifically to put in ice cream, and their stuff's incredible. They started in Portland, they worked their way down the West Coast. Now they're either open or about to open in Miami. The pandemic kind of messed with their plans, but the thing about ice cream is it covers everything. You can get the cheap industrial gallon of vanilla at the supermarket. Then you can work your way up through various levels. I mean, look, the quality of ice cream generally is measured by the degree of butterfat. The more butterfat, the creamier, richer the ice cream feels until you get to about 18%. When you get over 18%, it starts to feel oily.
Yeah.
But you can get anything along those lines. And I'm not endorsing this, I'm just mentioning it. The new thing in ice cream is benefits. Ice cream with benefits.
Yes.
You can get ice cream with probiotics.
Yes.
You can
Yes.
get ice cream with vegetables hidden inside it in the premise that you'll get your kids to eat something healthy. There's even an ice cream that claims if you eat it before bed, it won't keep you up. Now, I did not know that ice cream before bed would keep you up, but it's called
My
nightshade. And
favorite way to make ice cream, because I'm doing this plant-based stuff now,
yeah,
just get overly mature bananas and you whip them, and it's just unbelievable. You freeze it, you can put in whatever ingredients you want, and you probably can do, kale and whatever else you want to, but yes, that is, it's really interesting. But so people can also enjoy some artisan ice cream for their summer. Then that's really interesting. I know in Italy they were doing an ice cream with Parmesan, the milk that was used for
ooh,
Parmigiano Reggiano cheese.
think about that, because salted caramel is a terrific flavor because it balances sweet and salt.
Oh yeah,
The
oh that.
Parmesan would be. I had some phenomenal Parmesan the other day. Ooh, I was making. I just learned incredibly how to make cacio e pepe.
Uh,
And I didn't have Padano, so I used Parmesan from. We have a
right,
very good local cheese store.
yes.
I'm going to live on that for the rest of my
Well,
life.
cacio and pepe, the real cacio and pepe is made with pecorino.
But that's it. I said Padano.
Pecorino,
Yes,
yes,
yeah.
and that is not that easy to find here. The real pecorino from Abruzzo, which is where that dish comes from also, although they do it in Rome. It's like a big specialty.
Well, they claim it's Roman, but okay.
Sometimes you can find that pecorino from the Roman.
Yeah, not on a small barrier island with one cheese store.
Yes. Well, you can find that. But yeah, cacio e pepe.
What a dish!
Yes.
It's post-pandemic.
Yes.
My wife and I are vaccinated. Our friends are vaccinated. For the first time in a year, we went to their house, someone else's house, to have a meal, and he made cacio e pepe.
Oh, wow.
And I incredibly had never made it.
Yeah.
And I stood over his shoulder, and then he gave me the printed out directions he was using. And my wife said, "Could we have it tomorrow?" So we've had it like 3 times in the 2 weeks since we were at his house.
Up on that. It's so incredible that it's such a simple dish with only a few ingredients, but it's just such an incredible dish to eat. And it was so funny when all the restaurants in Italy started picking up on certain, because it's a very like a kind of a home base.
Yeah.
Now it's a gourmet thing all over the world. So people just, finally discovered it. But yes, that's really delicious. If you don't have pecorino, Parmigiano works too.
Yeah, but I'd like to make it perfectly.
Yes.
The thing that it reminded me of was like almost everyone, I use pre-ground pepper, which is a sin. But for the cacio e pepe, I ground the pepper and I toasted it. And the difference between fresh ground and toasted, well, first of all, when you toast any spice, it's just something special. He said as he drove further down this very narrow rat hole about one Italian dish. But, so good.
Yes, it is. It's amazing. David, thank you so much for sharing your Memorial Day with us and sharing all those interesting facts and information about everything. So now we can officially start our summer holiday.
Happy summer.
So this is David Paige, creator of Diners, Drives, and Dives, and your book, Food Americana. Where can people find that?
Amazon.com, Walmart.com, Target.com, Barnes & Noble. If they sell books, you'll find it there.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, David. And we'll be asking you to come back sometime in the future. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Enjoy your Memorial Day. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show, and thanks, as always, to my producer, Britton Roselle, and this week's special guest, David Paige. And happy Memorial Day. Let us know what you're cooking. Send us some pictures, share pictures on social media, hashtag it the Maria Liberati Show, or you may want to share a recipe with us. You can also share that in the comment section at themarialiberattishow.com or marialiberati.com. And as always, you can find me on marialiberati.com, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on LinkedIn at M Liberati, on Pinterest at Maria Liberati, on my Roku channel, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati, and on my Vimeo channel, Maria Liberati. And let's see, you can find my Gourmand World Award-winning book series, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking, at marialiberati.com, artoflivingprimamedia.com, and anywhere books are sold. Until next time, until next week, peace, love, and pasta.